It's good to have a fellow Aberdonian on the podcast. I think this is only about the second time.
Oh, really? Who was the first?
Little Kick.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Good friends of ours. Did you have Stephen on?
Yeah, it was good. Did you kind of come up around the same time?
Let me think. They were maybe a little after us. I think we were running in different circles at the time. Like, we very much grew up in like the alternative kind of punk and like emo and metal and pop punk scene. So maybe they were going the same time as us, but as far as I can remember, we didn't play shows with them.
Yeah, the paths never crossed.
Yeah. But we'd so their drummer Scott, he played in a pop punk band called Flight 19, and we did our first ever tour with them when we were 15.
Nice.
Like we were meant to do like a full UK tour with them, but I think we actually ended up only playing like 3 shows. Like we drove down for the Glasgow show, and when we arrived for sound check, myself and Jordan, we got ID'd, and yeah, so I think that happened like twice on that tour. And then like Jordan's dad was driving us around in just this little van. And we got our first taster of life on the road, and we got to play at like the Windmill in Brixton, which was nice. Awesome. Yeah, that's like a seminal little venue. I don't know if it's still open. I'm not too sure, but we got to play there.
Have you guys headlined that?
Flight 19 headlined that show, and then we have headlined the Windmill in Brixton, but it was a long time ago.
Where about in Aberdeen did you grow up? Where about kind of roughly were you?
I was in a place called Manifield. So
I know where you are.
Yeah, so yeah, city, very central. It's like 10-minute drive into town. So I grew up there, with some friends who were super close to me from school, and we would all find trouble around those parts.
Yeah, I was reading about when you were kind of 14, 15, maybe slightly pre-Xcerts, I think, and you were kind of in like a different incarnation of it, and you kicked everyone out of the band.
Yeah.
Were you always kind of driven from a young age in that way, like that drive to succeed?
Yeah, I think I definitely had ideas above my station for sure, and from a very early age wanting whatever I did to be as great as it possibly could be. And if I didn't think it was as great as it possibly could be, then I had to cut some people from the team. Yeah, even back then when we were like 14, just playing awful cover versions, but I could sense that people in the band weren't taking it as seriously as I was. And I didn't think that was weird at the time, that I was striving for more. I don't know, it was just something within me, but yeah, I could sense that people had other interests. Of course they did. They were 14, but I was kind of like all in from that age. So, I ditched everybody, and then we had to record a song for some sort of compilation, but I'd kicked everybody out, so I ended up playing everything on that track myself, and thinking I was some sort of young Dave Grohl or something, playing everything that. And I recorded that at a studio called Captain Tom's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's where we used to rehearse. And Tom then went on to release the Xcerts' first EP. Well, the EP that kind of was quote unquote professionally recorded.
Was anything on that EP that kind of continued and made it onto the first record? How old were you when you did that?
That was when we were 15. Yeah.
Oh, right.
We were 15 then. So funnily enough, that EP was definitely the start of us shifting sound. That was when we started becoming like Idlewild and Biffy Clyro obsessives. And we realized that, us writing music that made it sound like we were from California just made us look really silly. So once we went to see Biffy Clyro live, we were like, oh, we look ridiculous.
I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of young bands go down that route, though. What is it that kind of draws you to that? Kind of going for that slightly American stylized type thing.
I don't know what it is. And like I'm still a huge fan of so many American artists, and and that scene in general. But I guess maybe like back then it was almost like a Skittles packet. Everything was so bright and. The only thing I can like compare it to is like Sweeties. It was, but the other thing is that all that stuff is like, especially during the golden era of pop punk, was really, really brilliant. Like the songwriting was fantastic. So they spoke about adolescence and teen angst, and in a way that was really like digestible for like my age group. So I think we just latched onto that.
Yeah, it just pulls you in when you're kind of at that age. Did you see any of those bands live?
Yeah. I've seen heaps of them. Oh my god. I've seen Blink live numerous times, The Offspring, AFI, Newfound Glory, Finch, Brand New, Taking Back Sunday. Oh my god, the Starting Line. The list goes on. The list goes on and on. And we've been fortunate enough to tour with some of these bands, which is really, really cool.
What image kind of stands out most to you in your mind when you think back to then that first Captain Tom's experience, that first, time in the studio?
It definitely felt kind of otherworldly to me, especially when we went to record that track. The track is called Ripping Away. I still remember it. I reckon I could still play that, which is wild. So yeah, I guess it felt like being on board a spacecraft or something. It was just, completely, everything was really alien to me, but really exciting. And the idea of going in with nothing and then coming out with like a recorded song that you had written yourself and recorded yourself, it was like, really exciting. I just remember feeling very free in the studio as a kid. I was a pretty kind of like, I was very much an in-betweener at school. I couldn't quite find my place, and then as soon as I discovered music and the culture that comes with it and the shows that were going on in Aberdeen and the people who I met at these shows and hanging out at Captain Tom's and stuff, it kind of like, started to give me a sense of purpose and kind of a realization as to actually who I was and that I could fit into the world kind of post-school.
What you're speaking there about being a little bit of an in-betweener when you were in school, was part of that because of the drive? Because I imagine when you're 14, 15 and you've got these creative ambitions, can that be a little bit isolating? Because there's probably not many people going about who are in the same boat as that and have this kind of drive to succeed and this drive to create things.
Yeah,
make
absolutely.
Music.
Yeah, for sure. Especially at my school, it felt like, people were very driven to do the sensible thing of go, they were very driven to have a career and go to university and, achieve grades in school and whatnot. And I just had completely different plans and ideas and dreams. And when myself and Jordan connected in school, it was like, you're completely like-minded and you're into the same stuff as me and you seem as driven as me to like want to be a better musician. So yeah, as soon as I clicked with Jordan, that was kind of that was it. The rest is history. Here we are. Like, how long have we been a band? So long. So long. But like, I was initially, I didn't really have plans to be a musician at that age. Basically, I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease when I was 16, and I thought I was going to either do something with theatre or sport. And then basically when I got diagnosed with Crohn's, they were like, you can't play sport because you're going to bruise like a peach. And so it's like, oh, god damn. So I was off school for so long, and I was so weak. I was very, very anemic at the time as well. And I basically watched MTV2 all day religiously. MTV2 used to have like little rolling facts about the bands whilst the music video was playing, and this video came on and I was like, oh my god, what the hell's this? I'd never heard anything like it, and it was Glassjaw with Cosmopolitan Blood Loss, and there was a little fact rolling at the bottom saying they just had to cancel a European tour because Daryl Palumbo was suffering from Crohn's disease. And I was like, oh my god, like, because at the time the illness is still really, there's not many facts about the illness, and there's still a lot uncertain about it, and treatment and whatnot. So at the time I genuinely thought I was, over dramatic emo 15, 16-year-old thinking I'm gonna die, and I was like, oh my god, no, I can do this thing. Look at this guy, he's on my TV screen, and this band are from New York. I can definitely put all my efforts into this one thing. So I think really I did have this drive from when I was like 14, but it wasn't until I was 15, 16 diagnosed with Crohn's that I was like, right, well, if I can't do sport, then I'm gonna go all in on music.
Can it still pose difficulties for you now when you're touring, or is touring more of an easier route as opposed to something like sport, like you say? Is it more of a manageable route with it?
It isn't. I haven't had too many flare-ups on tour. I'm pretty good with what I eat, and within the past year I've like completely changed my diet, and that's sorted it out. Basically, I'm eating vegan now, and it seems to be working. So yeah, I'm gonna keep doing that. But I mean, I had a flare-up on tour maybe 2 years ago when we were in Europe with Nothing But Thieves, and it was hellish. It was I had actually forgotten how bad it can get, and I was just in the back of the van writhing around in pain before we played. It was awful, absolutely awful. And then also stress is really, really bad for it. So every time we go to make a new record, I have a flare-up. And I'm like, why is this happening? It's because I'm just stressed out about trying to make a great record.
That must be so difficult in life outside that as well, though, because say you're going through a stressful experience, even in your personal life, does that then prompt the Crohn's disease to flare up, which would surely only make you more stressed? And then is that kind of a circle?
Yeah, it definitely can be. I've kind of like post kind of 2017, I kind of had to like rewire my brain to just slow everything down in my life and kind of in my head, and my wires got all crossed for a minute, and I was just like, it was just a really bad time, and I was just super negative, and just everything in my head was really messy and chaotic, and there was definitely flare-ups during that time. And then, like you say, that would cause me more stress. And it was a bit of a vicious cycle. So I had to kind of just go to work on myself and uncover some truths, and some nasty, ugly truths. And then take a step back and kind of look at myself and say, you don't need to be doing this. You don't need to be this stressed out.
Was that the same period that went on to kind of influence and inform the last record?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
But the bulk of that record, was that the same period that you were living in the mansion?
Yeah. That's so funny. That's so funny that you know the name of it. That's great.
How would you describe that place? Because I've only heard little bits and bobs about it, but I'm not too familiar with the exact specifics.
Yeah. So if it's funny that I feel like the mansion now has a little bit of like mystique about it. If everybody saw that place, it's like there's no romance there for sure. There's nothing. So basically, the mansion was a studio flat I moved into post breakup. I was living with my girlfriend at the time, split up. I had to get out there, so I moved into this tiny little studio flat. I knew it was a really dingy spot. Like, the room looked out onto the back of this really gothic, horror movie-esque looking graveyard, like at the back of a church. My next door neighbor, I felt so sorry for her. She was clearly going through a ton of stuff, but she would like wake up, or I would wake up at 3 a.m. hearing her through these paper thin walls screaming, "He's not real," like over and over again. The dude upstairs from me was nocturnal, so when I was going to bed, he was getting up and then he'd blast his television really loud. Like foxes were constantly shagging in the graveyard, all that kind of stuff, you know. Relentless. Foxes are relentless. Basically, I knew when I went to look at the place that it was bad, but in my head, I basically said to myself, I'm not going to rely on my environment to make myself better. I'm just going to rely on me. So I wanted to put myself in a position where I was surrounded by kind of, I don't know, misery. And I thought that if I was surrounded by that stuff, then yeah, I only had myself to kind of will myself to get better and to put myself in a positive state. Which is, looking back now, is kind of fucked up, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
Did that work in any way, or was that quite a kind of false hypothesis?
It did. I mean, it did work. It worked to a certain extent. It definitely did work to a certain extent. Like, I got songs out of it for sure, and like there's songs on the last record where I can pinpoint. Like, there's a song on the last record called "We're Gonna Live," and I had this exact kind of epiphany when I was in the mansion, laid on the floor, just bawling my eyes out, staring at the ceiling, with my next door neighbor screaming, whatever she was screaming at the time. And I was just like, this can't be it. This cannot be the end of my story. This just can't be it for me. And so I went out that night. I just picked myself up and just ran. I wasn't in like running gear or anything. I was just in my regular clothes, but I just ran for ages, like sprinted for as far as I could, basically. And then came home and then started writing "We Are Gonna Live." So it definitely fueled the fire somewhat, but it was also kind of pretty kind of gnarly just during that time. And also like my shower kind of, basically the steam from the shower uncovered that I'd been living there for 4 months with black mold across the entire wall of the main room. Like that kind of stuff. Like they had just painted over it before I moved in, that kind of stuff. It was just like, oh man, this is so gnarly. So yeah, I got out of there. But I definitely got some good stories from that time.
Yeah, I mean, when you were saying there about how the idea of putting yourself in a place where you were only going to be able to rely upon yourself to get yourself out of there mentally. When you look at that from a slightly objective, you think it might work, but then it does also feel like you're maybe putting yourself in an even darker place unnecessarily.
Yeah,
that makes it maybe even harder to get out of.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think what I learned after being in the mansion was that, like, you do need to lean on people from time to time. You need to lean on love. You need to lean on positivity. Like, you need to lean on good energy and good people, and you need to do that. And at the time, I was just stubborn and naive in thinking that I could do it all myself, and I didn't want to put anybody else out, because I'd like freaked some people out post breakup. Like I really freaked my parents out and freaked some friends out with like my behavior and kind of stuff I was saying and how I looked, and just, yeah, it wasn't good. I wasn't looking after myself. I wasn't living a good, healthy life. And so I came out of that with this newfound like realization that I need other people at times. Everybody needs people at times for help. You know, that's what friends and family and loved ones are for. So yeah, it gave me this new perspective though, and I came out of that time and just, yeah, with like a new sense of lease on life and a sense of gratitude for all my darling friends and my family. Yeah.
Is that where the hope in that record comes from?
Yeah, for sure. And also, well, yeah. To be fair, actually, I think the light and the hope on that record stems from me living in the mansion, having such a dire time, and then getting in the practice room with the boys. That felt more like every time I stepped into the practice room to write, that I felt more at home in the studio with the boys than I did when I was actually back home in the mansion. The first few sessions of writing for Hold On To Your Heart were dire. I was breaking down. Myself and Jordan were fighting a lot. We didn't know which way we wanted to go. It was just really, really messy. I was just carrying a lot of weight into practices. Something just snapped in me, and the first song we wrote for that record was Daydream, and that was the first song that sounded hopeful, and it had that kind of 80s thing. It was meant to be like a kind of Rick Springfield meets Cheap Trick kind of vibe, and once we touched upon that sound, then the floodgates opened, and we wrote that entire record super quick. But I think the hope and the light from that record is from just feeling really joyous when I was with the boys in the rehearsal space, because that's our safe haven, and it was just, I was very happy to be there, and I think it just came out in the music.
Did those sessions have a certain intensity about them as well, though? Because if you're in quite a fundamentally unhappy place and that's your one escape from it, does that kind of lend them a certain pressure? That maybe, hadn't been there in previous records if you weren't in such a dark place and using it for such a kind of pivotal means of escape.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely fueled a fire, that's for sure. But we kind of started to break away from fear with our writing on that record, which was really really valuable, and we've taken that a step further with the next project that we're going to be doing that should be coming next year. I think the boys also knew what I was going through, so they were super willing as well to make this. I think they could see that it was helping me, working with them and making the record, and I feel like we all felt that it, maybe halfway through the writing process, it felt like this had to be this life affirming record, to kind of, so we could get to the end of it and I could say, look at what we just did. Look at this complete, look at the wreckage, and then look at the magic we made from it. Because to me, Hold On To Your Heart, the record in comparison with reality is night and day. We could have made a really, really miserable record. It would have been just as authentic, but we definitely needed to make this joyous thing. Just had to, and it came really naturally. So I haven't given it too much thought about kind of how it ended up being so joyous, but we definitely knew we wanted it to be life affirming and to bring hope to others. We didn't want to bum people out with that record. I was bummed out for too long before that.
Did it ever feel natural at any point to write those slightly sadder songs? Did any of them kind of come out in the process, but then you kind of made this conscious decision that no, we're going to do something that's going to be more hopeful?
Yeah, absolutely. Because There Is Only You, the record beforehand, was kind of, there's moments of light in there, but lyrically it's pretty dark. So we knew we definitely wanted to shift from there, and I wanted to find some light at the end of the tunnel for each track. Even if the lyrics did take a slightly darker turn, I definitely still wanted there to be light at the end of each song. Yeah, that was definitely a conscious thing, that we wanted it to be more positive.
Which of those tracks on that record do you think you were the bravest in lyrically, in terms of kind of tackling that darkness head on and expressing it in a way that you could then make hopeful and become life affirming?
I'd say maybe the opening track on The Dark. It's pretty, well, it's very, very upfront. I mean, that song is, it wears its heart on its sleeve, and that's why it was originally, it had been discussed maybe we should put it in the middle of the record to make it almost like feel a bit more kind of Springsteen-y, like throw in a piano track midway through. But I thought it was just such a perfect opener because it sets the scene, and the lyrics for that song for the introduction to the album are a lot darker. So when it kicks in with Daydream and then feels like falling in love and first kiss, it's like the point was to have this kind of darker intro, so it almost felt like it was carrying on from There's Only You, so people would hear it and be like, okay, I think we know what's coming, and then you get hit with Daydream, and which is a lot more, it's a much more positive spin on a darker story.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it gives those tracks that follow the positivity of them comes with an added weight, because you kind of remind people of where the band were on the last record with that darkness, and then, like you say, undo expectations.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what we hoped the listener would feel.
Where did the kind of soundscape of it come from in terms of those 80s influences and maybe the kind of slight Tom Petty thing going on a little bit? And I know you've spoken about the John Hughes kind of idea behind it as well. When did that start to take shape and come into the process and the idea to mold it in that form?
Yeah, so Daydream came without us talking about the 80s thing. But as soon as we started playing it, it was like, oh, this definitely has this kind of like Rick Springfield thing. And then as soon as the Rick Springfield influence was mentioned, I started writing songs to 80s movies without the sound on. And so there's like a whole host of like shitty 80s movies that you can watch on YouTube. And I used to put on, is it The Heavenly Kid?
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, don't blame me, man. It's a piece of shit. But aesthetically, it's like, yeah, it was nice to write to. And yeah, I'd throw that on, and then obviously I would put on The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink. Yeah, all that stuff. And I would, yeah, just to have it on just in the background. I'd walk around the house with an acoustic guitar and just have it on in the background. I kind of glance at it every so often and see if the music would kind of bring out a feeling within me that was suited to the scene. So yeah, films were super important for that record, because for Hold On To Your Heart, that was the first record for us where it was like, the whole thing needs to have an overall feeling, like how you feel at the end of a movie. We were quite prone to kind of playing friends new songs and being like, oh, but this bit, wait for this bit, like this big riff or this chorus drop, it was always about the bit. And I think a lot of people still do that, but for us, Hold On To Your Heart was the first time it was like, we don't want there to be any just cool bits. We want it to be really fluid, and for the listener to get to the end of the song and feel something big, or just not even big, just feel something. And we really took that influence from movies where you watch you can feel a certain way after a particular scene in a movie. You can feel incredibly emotional or happy or sad or scared or anything, and that's what I love about movies. It's like continuously moving. It's just a roller coaster of emotions. And yeah, I like movies where you're not in one mood for the entire thing. So yeah, we really took that influence and tried to make a soundtrack.
Are there any of the songs then for you that are directly linked to a certain moment in a film? Like if you were composing them while you had the films playing in the background, is there any when you think back to that time and writing them that you can directly link to a certain scene in a certain film?
Yeah, so the chorus for Feels Like Falling in Love, the original chorus, we actually changed it, but the original chorus was written with the last scene of The Breakfast Club in mind, where he punches that iconic scene where he punches this guy. It's the best scene ever, when he's walking across the football field. The original chorus of Feels Like Falling in Love was written to that, but then we completely changed it. and tried to, I don't know, we tried to like make like an emo AC/DC chorus.
You should rescore The Breakfast Club with music from that record.
Oh man, it's been mentioned before online. Like a few people have said, who do we have to like write to get the Xcerts to write like a teen movie soundtrack? Because I personally thought Hold On To Your Heart was like, we actually joked about it, saying it was like the soundtrack to a movie that had never been made. So I would love to do that. Oh my god, that'd be so sick. But yeah.
Was the 80s thing, was that why you got Gary Clark involved as well? To kind of, because I mean, he just gets those tones spot on when it kind of comes to recapturing the nostalgia for that sort of era.
Yeah, oh my god. I could spend this entire time talking about my love for that guy. He's just the best. He is the best. He's like Yoda. He's like, yeah, he's fully Yoda to me. He's otherworldly. He's the best. But no, that wasn't actually the reason at all, funnily enough. So Gary got mentioned to me. He hung out with our manager somewhere, and they discussed me heading up to Gary's studio in Dundee and working with him on something. And it was under the pretense that it may be for something else, like writing for other people. But then when I arrived, the first thing that we worked on was Hold On To Your Heart, the title track. And I think within like half an hour I was texting everybody saying like, oh my god, like we're definitely right. I'm here to write for the Xcerts for sure, and Gary's got to produce this record. Yeah, we had another few sessions and we worked on, so the songs we worked on with Gary, I mean, he worked on everything, but the songs that we actually co-wrote with Gary were Hold On To Your Heart, Show Me Beautiful, and Feels Like Falling in Love. And then he kind of did pre-production on everything else as well. Oh, and First Kiss Feeling, he did that. So I didn't know a mass amount about Gary before I went there, and then he kind of slowly but surely told me everything, and I dug deep on like Danny Wilson stuff after I worked with him, and then it all kind of clocked that of course he was going to get all these references because he was in it. He was actually in it. He was a star in the 80s. So everything that I was saying to him, all the reference points, he was like, oh my god, this is fucking exciting. This is so great. Like, I love that you're doing this. It was really great to get his kind of like input on the 80s stuff as well as everything else he did for that record.
I mean, it's cool that those songs that you mentioned that you worked with him, they're kind of the big emotional swells to a certain extent on the album.
Yeah, that's Gary. He is one big emotional swell. He's all about the feeling. Gary's all about the heart and the soul of a song and where it comes from, and it's a deep thing with Gary. So it makes sense that those ones are the deep cuts we did with him.
Where did the saxophone on Drive Me Wild come from? Because that's something I would have kind of pinned into him.
Funnily enough, we had the idea to have saxophone on There's Only You, but like I kind of mentioned earlier about the fear thing, we were way too worried to put saxophone on that record because we were a bunch of dicks and thought like it wasn't cool or something. I don't know, something strange. Just being young and silly. And when we wrote Drive Me Wild, instantly we were like, oh, this has to have a sax hook. And we got our friend Will from Black Peaks in on that, and he killed it. He absolutely killed it with that line. So no, it was actually our idea. We'd intended on having sax on that record pretty much from the off. And like I said, it had been discussed for There's Only You, but it made much more sense to have it on this one. And I'm so glad. He features twice on the record with it because we got him at the end of Cry as well, which was meant to be like a real homage to Springsteen. And to be fair, the sax on Drive Me Wild was meant to be very, very Springsteen, but ended up being fucking super sexy.
I can't imagine There Is Only You with saxophone on it though, because it's kind of such a almost like Nirvana, kind of almost grungy infused to a certain extent.
Totally,
right?
yeah. Well, that like tonally, that record was meant to be like guitar tones and stuff. We wanted it to sound like if Tom Petty fronted the Smashing Pumpkins. That was the kind of criteria for that.
That's a good elevator pitch.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So yeah, you're right. It like we would have probably shoehorned in some saxophone just to do it and have a talking point or something. It probably wouldn't have. It probably wouldn't have landed that nicely on the record. So I'm really glad we waited for Drive Me Wild. But it's funny because it ended up being a real big talking point when we dropped that song, and we didn't think anything of it just because like so much like of the rock and roll that we listened to has saxophone. So it was never really that like, it wasn't that like shocking to us, I guess. But I guess following up from There's Only You, where it was a grungy thing and the aesthetic was quite grungy, I guess it was quite I don't know. It did come out of left field a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. I think that what you were saying there about There's Only You as well, or a wee while back about how, that maybe there was a certain sense of fear.
Yeah.
Was part of that, I know that record was a bit of a tough one to make, was part of that because it was maybe a little bit difficult to have a sense of perspective when you're going through such a tough period in the midst of making something and there's kind of so much going on in your head?
Yeah, for sure. That was making There's Only You was a really like fuzzy or bleary or muddled time for particularly myself and Tom, our drummer, and then kind of midway through recording, Jordan had to leave to drive a band on tour for a week, and so it was just myself and Tom left in the studio, and we were like no use for one another. Like I wish there was like cameras set up because we were so bummed out. Like just the two of us just working all day and then drinking all night and then having to sleep in this like freezing cold RV outside. Or was it an RV? It was some sort of like bullet RV kind of thing. What do you call them?
Where'd you make that record?
Made it in Oxfordshire at this very rich dude's private studio. Really weird. I remember his name. I don't know if I'm allowed to say his name. Probably not. But yeah, he had his own studio, and then like one day he came in. Oh, anybody can Google his fucking name after this. He came in one day at like 2 p.m. super drunk, like wasted. And we were like, what the fuck is going on? And he was like, I'm celebrating. I can't tell you why though. I can't tell you why. And then he left. We were like, okay, back to the misery. Recorded a bit more, yada, yada, yada. He came back in with a bottle of champagne and some glasses and started dishing up drinks for everyone. And we were like, dude, what is going on? And he was like, oh, I've just bought Beckingham Palace. I've just bought David Beckham's place. It's like, what? He was like, yeah, I've just bought David Beckham's house. It's like, this is crazy. This is fucking wild. Like, we're here so poor and miserable trying to make a record that will change our lives, and this guy's just swanning around telling us he's bought David Beckham's house. It was very strange. Like the juxtaposition of that was funny.
Yeah, man. I mean, I was going to say the recording environment for that must have been such a juxtaposition of, you're recording this kind of dirty, grungy record in this immaculate private studio that's kind of high end.
Yeah, totally, completely. It was a funny juxtaposition, but then it was very apt then that we would be shoved into this like RV type. It was like a bullet. It's like a camper van. It's like a big silver bullet trailer kind of.
Oh, the ones that go on the back of cars.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
but
I know what you're speaking
it's
about.
got a specific name. I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, we were out there with no heating. It was just freezing cold. So it was very apt that we were staying there away from the house. These like 3, little emo kids can sleep out there. They'll be fine as long as they don't come anywhere near the house.
Was that record still firmly in your mind when you were on to work on Hold On To Your Heart then? When the kind of conversations for it began, was it still kind of there in the back of your mind? And how did it kind of infuse what you wanted to do next?
Well, it's funny because every time we go to make a new record, the first batch of songs that we write for said record end up sounding like B-sides from the previous release. So we wrote like 6 songs. And we were like, just sounds like it sounds like a band trying to sound like There's Only You. That's what it sounded like.
Is there ever any hidden gems though, and you're like, oh, I wish I'd kind of had this when we had the last record rolling around, it would have fitted in, slotted in really nicely here?
No, definitely not. I feel like if you're an act that are trying to like push forward, then you just can't recreate what you did. It's always going to be like a lesser version of itself. So that's maybe one reason as to why we keep changing sounds, because it's just like it's inauthentic and we just can't do it. We just don't have it in us to write songs that, you know, that we personally deem as good as what we just released. So no, every time we go to make a new record, we say we want to do something different. We don't know what that is specifically, but there's usually like a breaking point of us writing really bad songs and going, enough. Or like there'll be a catalyst, there'll be like one song that triggers everything. That's usually how it goes. With the newer stuff, it's been slightly different because the process has changed a lot, but we still kind of had that moment, to be fair, with the new stuff. So yeah, we weren't thinking about There's Only You for the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true what you said, and you've never felt like a band who look back, both literally and sonically, in the sense that every record feels like a very distinct kind of world of its own, in the same way a band like the Beatles or Arctic Monkeys, you know, each
Sure.
record is kind of like a timestamp and a different kind of genre and soundscape about it. How was that for you then, looking back in the Cold When We Smile last year? End of last year, was it? The kind of 10th anniversary?
Yeah, December 2019. Yeah, last time we toured.
Man, is that a year ago?
Yeah, fuck. Holy shit. That's crazy. This is the longest amount of time we haven't been on tour, for sure. I've just realised that. Wow.
You had so many tours, like support tours and stuff, off the back of the last record as well.
Yeah. That, like, it was great. I mean, the touring cycle for Hold On To Your Heart was great. It was just a crazy like year and a half for us, where it was just, I mean, we worked super hard. The touring for that was relentless, and then we released an EP at the end of that, the You Mean Everything EP. Oh no, it's called Wild Heart Dreaming, and we released that at the end, and we continued touring that. But like we finished off that entire cycle, and the EP cycle opening for Busted on the UK arena tour, which was like, yeah, like just fucking nuts. Like, it was the best. Like, seriously, so much fun. And then we went on to a headline tour, which was unreal. But like, we definitely felt a little bit burnt out by the end of it. So yeah, but the Cold Wind tour in December 2019, yeah, that was a trip. That was fun though. That was really fun.
When you did the reissue for that, did you kind of look back through all the old demos and stuff and all the old photographs?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we had to listen to some of the stuff that I'd completely forgotten about. I mean, to be fair, none of it was like awful. The main thing about it was we couldn't include a lot of extra tracks because of the actual recordings. Like, they were just too... I don't know if anybody would find much joy in listening to some of those demos because they were just so horribly recorded. But yeah, it was really great, actually. Like, funnily enough, what I was speaking about before, the end of the Hold On To Your Heart campaign, but at the end of that, I personally, I think the boys were too, like, I felt like we were borderline having an identity crisis, because we did the Busted tour and we were playing in arenas, and like, we didn't have to jump around. It was so far removed from, like, you know, being, when did we release Cold Wind? When we were like 19 or 20. It was like so far removed from that time, because to me, like, when we toured Cold Wind, we were still a total racket. We were just a little Scottish indie punk band kind of thing. yeah, so here we were on stage at like Wembley, and we didn't have to jump around or anything, we just had to sound great. And especially with an album like Hold On To Your Heart, to me that is a widescreen record. So I was like, oh my God, this is how we're meant to sound. This is how our band is meant to have always sounded. And we're here now. Oh my God, we're the fucking best band in the world. And, blocking out the Busted, we're headlining. And it was like, no, this is our show. This is our show. Yeah, we like played a sold out Wembley with Busted, which is like 12,000 people. And then the next night we were headlining a 250 cap room in Leeds. And it was like really that transition from Wembley to the Key Club in Leeds was like really, really jarring for me. I was like, oh my God, now it all feels really claustrophobic again, and it doesn't sound as bombastic and big as it should. It all sounds way too confined. I feel like we're trying to like break out of these walls and punch through this roof. And that tour, I was just like I just couldn't quite find like my bearings, because we got to play Arena Rock Band for a bit, and then we had to come back and be us again. Like the reality of it is that we were playing in a 250 room in Leeds, 250 cap room, and I just couldn't gauge like how to act on stage. I was like, shit, what am I doing now? Oh, I have to jump around again because I feel like this is more of like a punk show, but I'm so now used to just kind of standing still and making sure that everything just sounds great. So yeah, I had a bit of like, just a bit of an identity crisis on that EP tour. I still think those shows were still great, but I definitely like just was like, fuck, what is this band? Who are we? Like, what aesthetically, what's this about now? And so my point is, going back on the Cold Wind stuff was like really, really beneficial for all of us, and especially me, to just like look at where we came from. And it was like, oh, I know what we are. And like that really helped again with like the new record. It really did. And it was really kind of educational to kind of look back, because we're so used to looking forward. But yeah, looking back and at that time was actually really, really beneficial for us. So I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, kind of just brought you back to your roots to a certain extent.
Yeah, massively, and reminded me of like all our like earlier influences and kind of who we were when we weren't trying to really impress anyone other than ourselves. It was like, I look back at all those photos and recordings and stuff, and it was just like a very pure time. We were a very pure band at that time, and we hadn't really spent much time on the road or anything, so everything was just amazing at that point. Everything was just wild and fun and like really punk, like very, very punk at the time. So it was good just to look back and be like, retrace our steps and moving forward. It's, like I say, it's definitely helped kind of influence kind of what we're gonna do next in a strange way.
We've spoken a few times about this progression, from that kind of those raw kind of scrappy, punky band days to the widescreen 80s infused Hold On To Your Heart. As you've grown older and you've grown through that and you've kind of lost your naivety a wee bit that maybe you had when you were that younger band, how has that impacted your songwriting? Because like the weight that gives songs like Home vs. Home, on that first record, its power, and the weight that gives Show Me Beautiful, that its power, I can't work it out, but it feels like it's coming from a very different place. But they have a very distinct weight, but quite different.
Yeah, I think that's like the common thread throughout the records, is that for some reason we do have this weight, and it's like a thread that goes through each release. But it's interesting. I'm probably, maybe we'll talk again when the next project comes out, and I'll speak about it more in depth. But the next, so we basically realized at the end of the Hold On To Your Heart touring cycle was that we've always had this like we've always done everything and played our music and written everything with like a certain kind of tension, not within the relationship of the band. I mean, there's been tension, of course there has, but like we're family. We're very, very much in love with one another. But there's just been this tension, and I don't know where it's come from. I don't know if it stemmed from starting so young, you know, being 15 and playing in clubs with bands in their mid-20s and the crowds being in their mid-20s and us having to like really, really show everybody that we rock and that we're really, you know, we should be there and like we're worth something. And we used to play really like way too fast and way too hard from the off, just to be like, you know, there was just this tension, nervous energy within us. And I feel like that's carried through up until now. I think we shook it loose a little bit on Hold On To Your Heart, but I don't think anybody else would be able to hear it, but the three of us, like if we listen to Hold On To Your Heart, I think like there's still moments I can hear it where there's a tension. So that's definitely been a common theme that just for us personally, that's been there on each release. And yeah, we spoke about it at the end of I think it was April 2019, we finished up that tour and we spoke about it and we were like, it's just time to like completely shake it loose, like completely get rid of it. We just don't want it there anymore. It just can't exist anymore. And I don't know if it's like if it's a fear thing or a negative thing, or maybe it is a positive thing. I don't know. We're going to find out. But yeah, we're definitely searching for something else without this tension now.
Did you all notice that together in sync, or did one member of the band kind of pick up on it and then bring it to the group and then you all realised?
I was the first person to voice my thoughts on it, and then everybody else agreed. Like, I think whether they had actually like said it out loud before or even thought about it in that exact moment that I said it, they were like, they both said, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's interesting that it's been there, and we had some tough times during the Hold On To Your Heart campaign internally with the band. Just a couple of strange, rough moments where we were kind of taking one another for granted, I think. And so maybe for them, it stemmed from that. But myself and Jordan did talk about it having been there since day one. So I don't know, but neither one of us can put our finger on it as to why it's there. But like for the next album, like I think basically I've said a lot, in song, or I will be talking about this a lot more, with just like I've had this with the music. It feels to me like the whole point of this is I've been trying to like find the answer to a question that I don't actually, but I don't actually know what the question is. So it's just this vicious cycle of like, I'm trying to reach this end goal, or like I'm trying to find the punchline to a joke, but I don't actually know what the joke is. Do you know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I've never thought about that before, but I've kind of just reappropriated it into my own life, and I'm thinking about the same thing in the sense that when I'm doing something like this and I'm speaking to bands all the time, I don't know why I'm doing it. I just feel driven to do it, and I'm kind of now thinking that you've said that I may be in the same position, that I'm chasing something and looking for something, but I've no idea what.
Yeah, it's fascinating, dude. After this, you should like try and pinpoint some certain moments in your past that relate to that, and I guarantee you so much stuff will like rise to the surface. It's like it'll freak you out. I had to do it for like our next record, and this whole because of this conversation that you and I are having about this whole thing, this quest to try and catch thin air. Once I actually kind of put things into perspective and thought about this idea, and then related it back to moments in my past, whether it be in relationships or certain scenarios I find myself in, it's quite eye-opening.
I wonder if everyone has it when it comes to their own thing. Maybe everyone has their own version of it, something that they're chasing, but they can't work out what it is. It could just be a part of life and that people are working towards figuring out what it is that they need.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I have so many creative friends who... I mean, you have to have a certain sense of fucking madness to do this. Like, to kind of indulge yourself in creative endeavours, whether it be, you know, conducting interviews with bands or writing or painting or making music, anything, acting, anything. Like, there's a certain, like, you do have to have a certain thing within you that that drives you to do this thing, to like just punish yourself over and over again in order to try and make sense of like your purpose. That's how I see it, for sure. That I'm kind of like, I'm doing all of this to like, hopefully one day I'm gonna look back and this has all been like, I keep thinking that maybe this is just, it's gonna be a map, and it's like I will eventually find peace, and I'll look back on the work that we did and be like, this is how me and my best friends brought me to this place of peace. I hope that happens. That's what I hope happens.
We were speaking earlier about how the songs, just to kind of to wrap us up, about how the songs on In the Cold Wind We Smile, it was like a, you know, like a photo scrapbook, and each song was kind of like an individual picture of something from that time. How does that fit into a song like Aberdeen 1987 for you? What does that song mean to you, and what is the picture it gives you when you play that song or when you think of it?
Ooh, it definitely makes me think of being young, romantic and reckless. That's how I feel whenever I don't listen to that song on the recording, but like whenever I play it and really like dig into the lyrics.
That's a great name for a record. Young, romantic and reckless.
Yeah. Oh shit, I shouldn't have said anything. That could have been the next one. Yeah, absolutely. That'll be my that'll be the autobiography for sure. That's great. Oh man, I should write that down, really. Oh, it's on the podcast. Somebody else has got that now. You can take it. If I ever dig into the lyrics when we're having like a particularly good show and I'm really, really in on the song and I'm feeling every line, then yeah, I'm straight back to being... I mean, it really does represent my youth and the change from moving from Aberdeen to Brighton. It really is the soundtrack of that transitional like phase of my life, because it references people and places in Aberdeen, but also references people and places in Brighton. Yeah, those stories, funnily enough, I won't go too much into it, because it seems that, you know, that song means a lot to a lot of people, and I don't want them to have the facts about it. I want them to interpret it how they want to. But both those scenarios, the scenario I'm singing about in Aberdeen and the scenario I'm singing about in Brighton and the people, it's all like interwoven. At that time it was all interwoven, and it's just funny that some of these people have never and will never meet, but they're big characters in a song of ours. So yeah, it makes me think of that time, and yeah, just youth. It makes me think of my youth and how great it was when I was 18 and 19 and being silly, and there not being that many consequences because we weren't adults. Yeah. What do you think? Like, what do you see when you hear that song? Out of interest, is it a similar thing? Is it a youthful thing?
I think so. It feels like it's got an affection and a slight nostalgia about it, but it's because it's weird, because it feels like a song that's kind of looking back, and it's being reflective, but at the same time there is an innocence about it that makes you feel like you're in your moment. I think it kind of, that's what works about it, is that it manages to straddle that line between being both reflective and kind of nostalgic, but also very much still feeling like it's in the moment of that period, which is probably why it kind of captures such a specific emotion for people.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know how how I stumbled upon being so nostalgic with the lyrics on that record. I think it just stems from, I don't know, being so like overly indulgent in thinking I'm a romantic kind of thing.
Maybe because you moved as well, because suddenly you've put a marker down in your life. That period of your life in Aberdeen is now over, and you're now starting a period of your life in Brighton. It's maybe one of those first instances when you suddenly acknowledge that you're kind of solidifying things, and there's certain moments in your life that you'll never be able to live again. Like when you're in school, it kind of feels like that's going to go on forever, and then it's only when you leave you kind of realize that, oh no, that's over and that's never coming back. And it's a weird feeling.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I agree with you. It could have been that. It's funny that song kind of captured the ear of so many people, because the recording of that song, I find it really hard to listen to, because it was done in like our friend's bedroom in Brighton, and I've got like a rancid cold, and I really don't think I sound good on that recording at all. I definitely don't. I know for a fact I don't, but I love the fact that like people don't care about that. There's like a real innocence to the recording.
It's a testament to the songwriting as well, when people are kind of just moving past that and just kind of latching onto the emotion of it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thanks for saying that.
Did night school used to be called McLovin?
Yeah, how do you know all this stuff? This is like Nardwar. Yeah.
I'm not that good.
Nardwar. How did you know that? Is that out there?
It was in an interview somewhere. I went through. Oh, wow. There's a lot of interviews with you. I think. So I went on YouTube and I put in the Xcerts interview, arranged them by date, and then scrolled all the way down to the bottom and just went through them, because there's interviews with you guys from like 2008 and stuff on there.
Fuck. Oh god, that sounds hellish.
Why was that called McLovin? Or is it the Superbad character? Yeah.
Yeah. I think. When did Superbad come out?
2007.
Yeah, I mean, we probably wrote that song in like 2009. So it was still kind of like, so actually, to be fair, I'll give credit to, do you remember Flood of Red? Do you remember that band?
No.
Okay, good friends of ours. They're no longer playing or making music, but they were around the same time as us. They were a little more established than us, and they were kind of killing it for a period. They used to, like, all their demos were just funny names of their friends or characters from TV shows or movies, or they were just all named funny stuff. I think we took that from them, where we started like naming all our demos after our friends or after characters' names and stuff like that. So McLovin stuck around for a bit, and then I think our management were like, no, there's no way. But then, funnily enough, on There's Only You, Kevin Costner stuck. So there you go. Kevin Costner is the only one that stuck around.
Why was that track called Kevin Costner?
Yeah, no other reason than we were like probably talking about him in the studio and how brilliant Kevin Costner is and how like fantastic his movies are, and we were like, okay, cool, this one's called Kevin Costner, because we were probably just working on it at the time. And like sometimes, when you're saving stuff, you just have to like quickly come up with a name. Like Eringa would have been like, what's the name of the song? And be like, well, we were just talking about Tin Cup, so call it Kevin Costner. And so that'll be the reason then when it came around to actually calling it something, just like no specific line from the chorus, because you usually take the chorus line for the title. There was no like specific line from it that we could use really, because like the main hook is, if love is warm then why am I so cold, but that doesn't really flow off the tongue all that nicely. It's not a great song title, so yeah, it's not a great song title, we'll call it Kevin Costner.
I guess it's more memorable.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think anybody actually thinks of Kevin Costner when they hear that song. Maybe they do. I don't know. It's an interesting thought.
If you build it, they will come. That's a Kevin Costner quote, isn't it? Is that Field of Dreams?
Yeah, it's Field of Dreams. Whoa. That's my dad's favourite. It's my
Bloody good
dad's
film.
favourite. Yeah, there's so many good Kevin Costner movies, but yeah, he stuck around instead of but McLovin didn't. Crying shame.
If you build it, there will comes kind of an ethos that you could apply to the band, because it's been from album to album, it's kind of just been a build, a slow kind of steady build where it garners, a bigger and bigger fan base each time, kind of culminating and hold on to your heart. How does that feed into the music and your creativity, with it kind of being that steady incline instead of exploding on one random album?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely keeps that hunger going to kind of to get to the next stage. Like, for us, I don't know, maybe some people would disagree who are fans of our, of a particular record of ours. They'd maybe disagree with what I'm about to say, in that I feel personally like the fire for us has never gone out. Like, we've always had this hunger and we've always felt fueled and driven to try and write the best songs we possibly can, and to try new things and experiment. And I think if we had, I don't know, who's to say, we could have had a hit record and we could have all got addicted to drugs and blown our money on, cars and other cool shit. And so many artists that I like and bands that I like, there is a common thread where basically as soon as they become successful, their music and creative output isn't as good. Like, I've clocked that with so many artists and bands, which is totally fair enough. I'd definitely become complacent if I had a pool and owned a house and had a family and all that. But yeah, striving to reach the next stage is definitely something that keeps us motivated. And it's also just something that's totally within us, that's unexplainable, and that's some sort of kind of magic, this desire within us, and this mad burning desire to create and to, again, it's this thing that keeps cropping up, which I've caught, this never ending quest for this unattainable question and answer. It's that striving for that has just never diminished or wavered, and I'm still the three of us are still as fired up as we were when we were 15 playing in Dr. Drake's in Aberdeen, trying to impress older people.